So how many folks here have heard of this thing called Upworthy? Raise your hand. Cool, just a few of you. So at Upworthy, we try to make meaningful stuff go viral. So usually when you think of what goes viral, you think of funny pictures of cats or videos of people being silly. But at Upworthy, we try to make stuff that's meaningful, that's substantive, that stuff that matters go viral. That was weird. Okay, cool. Yeah, so what we do is we do three things. We find content online, we call that curation. We find stuff that's meaningful, stuff that we think should be exposed to the world. Then we package it up for the social web, for social media. So that people are more likely to share it, people are more likely to click on it in their news feeds, and then we distribute it to our audience. So there are three criteria essentially for something to be posted on Upworthy. First, it has to be visual. So our content really isn't text-based. We don't do articles. Instead, we do mostly videos, and we also do some graphics. Second, it needs to be shareable. So it's something that people will want to share to their friends and to their followers on social media. And third, it needs to be meaningful. And so this is somewhat subjective, but essentially, we're not looking for celebrity gossip or something like that. We're looking for stuff that actually matters, stuff that will help change the world. So we launched Upworthy about a little bit over a year ago, and when we launched, everyone was kind of pessimistic about what we were doing. They said, good luck with that. We'll see just how much content you can bring in. We'll see just how much traffic you can bring in. In our first year, we've grown at a faster clip than a lot of other big media sites out there, recent media sites. So we're growing faster than Huffington Post, Business Insider, BuzzFeed. At the end of our first year, we were averaging around 10 million unique visitors per month. And that was a few months ago. That graph is actually a bit steeper now these days. We've been called the fastest growing media site in the world by Business Insider and Fast Company. And so the question I'm sure I want to answer is, well, how did you get to this point? So I'm going to share what we focus on very, very, with kind of this laser-like focus on, and that's this equation around virality. So we quantify virality as shares per view multiplied by clicks per share. So we kind of have this formula in our head, and everyone in the company works towards improving the individual metrics in this formula. So let's take it one at a time. First, shares per view. So that's what we call shareability. So when I view a piece of content on Upworthy, for every 100 people, how many people share it? Do 5 people share it, 10 people, 20 people? That's shareability. That's the percentage of people that share. Now, obviously, the higher, the better. Clicks per share is when you see an Upworthy link posted to Twitter or Facebook. What is the percentage of people that clicks back to Upworthy? So you can kind of start to imagine the viral loop being created here, where people find content on Upworthy, share it out to their social networks, and then their friends and followers come back to Upworthy, they share it, and so on and so forth, and there's this kind of viral loop going on. So the key thing about this equation is that because it's multiplication, both values actually need to be high for virality to work. So if you just have, let's say, high clickability, so let's say if people see something in their news feed, in their Facebook feed or in their Twitter feed that says, win a free iPad, a lot of people might click on that. That has high clickability. But then when they go to that website, it's probably like some scam, so no one's going to share that, right? And because of that, it's not really going to go viral. The same thing with if something is really shareable, meaning it's a great piece of content, but then when people see it in a news feed, it's kind of boring and they don't click through because they don't think it's about something that's really that good. That also kills the viral loop. So you need both. You need shareability and clickability. And at our company, all our 4 startup roles, and surprisingly, our company is actually structured a lot like this graph is. We all focus very intently on this core formula and improving our shareability and our clickability. So our storytellers are who we call our curators. They're actually building our product because we're a media company. And they kind of find the content and promote it and try to get it to go viral. And then I'm going to talk here on the design and coding side, on the product side, of how we also boost these numbers. So first, shareability. Right? So the key, so just as a reminder, shareability is the percentage of people who, when they see a piece of content, will share it to their social networks. The first thing is you have to have a really good piece of content. This is one of, finally, a screenshot of our website, and this is one of the most popular things we've ever posted. And it was a kind of a mini documentary about this kid. He had cancer and he died when he was just 19, and it was a documentary about his last few weeks with us. And it was just a great video. It was heartwarming. By itself, it's going to be very viral. So we had great content. But on the product side, on the designer side, on the engineering side, how do we boost shareability from that? How do we make this already great piece of content go even more viral, be even more shareable? So what we've done is we have a lot of share buttons here, right? So we have share buttons on the top, we have share buttons on the bottom, and this to the left over there is kind of like a hover over, that when people hover over the video or the infographic with their mouse, it kind of appears and animates. So you might be thinking, well, this is kind of overkill. Like, I know how to share on Facebook, I know how to share on Twitter. Why do I need all these buttons? But the fact of the matter is, for the year or so we've been around, we've actually come to this design through very careful and deliberative testing of what is the design that gets people to share. And so we use this tool called Optimizely. Who here has heard of Optimizely? Who here uses Optimizely at your startup? Ooh. Everyone should use Optimizely at your startup. It's great. It helps you A/B test your features. It helps you A/B test your content. So an A/B test is essentially an experiment on your users. So what we do is we set up an Optimizely experiment to say, well, if we take out these share buttons on the bottom here, how does that affect overall sharing? How does that affect our overall share rate? And I can tell you specifically that when we took out these bottom buttons, our share rate dropped by 10%. And when you're talking about virality and when every percentage point counts, that was just too much of a loss for us, and so we put them back in. And we've run literally dozens and dozens of experiments on this content page of how exactly the design should look and how it should work so that people share. So we tested things like, well, maybe we should have a button for Tumblr, or a button for Pinterest, or a button for Google+. We've tested all of those, and we discovered that they don't actually work that well, so we dropped them. We've discovered that the share on Facebook instead of the Facebook like button is actually much more effective. So don't use Facebook like, use Facebook share, because that actually shows up in people's news feeds. So we've done all these sorts of tests using Optimizely and other tools, and we've arrived at what is a very optimized experience for our users, and it's optimized because it's really effective. I just stumbled upon this site yesterday. It's called Scanvine, and it ranks all the major media outlets online by how much their average piece of content gets shared. And I swear I didn't game this or anything. So Upworthy is clearly at #1. And the reason for that is because we have worked tirelessly at this idea that we need to have a high share rate on our site. And we worked and iterated and improved the site until we got to really high share rates, and it has paid off. So now to the second part of that virality equation, clickability. This is clicks per view. So when people view a piece of content on Facebook or Twitter, do they click back to go to Upworthy? Is it worth their time when they're scrolling through their news feeds, when there's a lot of stuff in your news feed? Is it worth your time to actually click and go to Upworthy? So the first thing we do is we make sure our content looks really, really good in social networks. And the way we do this is on Facebook, we support something called Facebook meta tags. And Facebook meta tags let you specify the thumbnail and the headline and a little blurb here. Same thing for Twitter and Twitter cards. There are meta tags, HTML tags that you can put on your site that make sure that your thumbnail gets embedded here in Twitter, and you got your headline and you got a little teaser there. So we work really hard at making sure that all our content looks great on Twitter, that there are really good headlines, that are really good thumbnails. Speaking of that, part of our editorial process is that for every piece of content we write, our curators write 25 headlines. So they attack it from all these different angles. And so whenever you view a piece of content on Upworthy, you can be pretty sure that there are actually 24 other headlines that were written for that piece of content that were just thrown away. And the reason we do this is because it ensures that we're tackling what we want, which is clickability, from a lot of different angles. So first, our editors, our curators, I should say, just kind of like pick their favorite ones from these 5 and then like talk to each other about, hey, which one do you like? But that wasn't really experiment-driven. It wasn't really metrics-driven. So what we did is we built this kind of proprietary technology we call clickability testing. And you can think of it as this machine that you pop in a bunch of headlines, a bunch of thumbnails about that content, and then we test it. We have some custom A/B testing on our site for our user base, and out comes the winning headline, the headline that gets clicked on the most. Another little piece of tech we built around just tracking virality itself is the concept of generations. So when something goes viral, there's many generations of sharing going on, right? I go to Upworthy.com directly, I share it on Twitter, that's the first generation, and then my friends on Twitter click through and see the content, well, they're the second generation, and then hopefully they share, and that's the third generation, fourth generation, and so on. So we're actually quite explicit about tracking generationality. So whenever you share a piece of content on Twitter, we actually have a little trick where we append this g=2 to the URL, and that tracks the generation. So if this is me as a first generation user, I'm using the tweet button on the site. It appends as g=2. So we know as we track live traffic that, well, this is a second generation person coming in, and then we have, when the second generation person shares, it becomes g=3 and 4 and 5 and so on. So all this kind of analytical thinking has really paid off. Here's a screenshot of Google Analytics from about a month ago. This is Google Analytics real time, which tells you how many people are on your site at any one time. And this was during a spike. We had 83,000 people on our site, and we're able to see generation by generation how much virality is being accrued by various pieces of content. So my takeaways for all of you involved in the startup now: think about having this kind of core formula. Like we have a core formula for virality at Upworthy. So we have virality equals shareability versus clickability. Well, for your startup, what's your core formula? And then use measurements and experimentations and analytics to really improve each aspect of that formula so that you can kind of grow and reach whatever your goals are. Use off-the-shelf technology. Like I said, we use Optimizely for testing stuff. We use Ruby on Rails. We use Heroku, and we just use off-the-shelf stuff for for most of our stuff, and then build custom solutions when you really need it. So that's it. This is probably my favorite tweet ever about Upworthy. This is actually a football player, NFL player. He said, "I watched this expecting a laugh, but got some serious knowledge dropped on me." And that's kind of what we try to do at Upworthy. So there's my contact information. So thank you very much.
All right, we got time for 2 questions, and preferably someone who hasn't asked a question yet. All right, Maria.
So aside from testing, like there's other sites on the web such as Mashable who just put out just a ton of crappy content all the time just to get a page view. So what are I mean, aside from what you said, what are you doing that's so different from the folks, so particularly at Mashable, who just put up like crap?
So what do we do different from Mashable and other large content generator sites like that? We really take the idea of curation to heart, and we also take the kind of our three core concepts: meaningful, shareable, and visual to heart. And we really filter the internet based on that criteria. So we actually don't generate too much of our own content. It's mostly we found content that people send to us. And I think the thing is our business model actually doesn't depend on getting just page views for the sake of page views. We actually partner with nonprofits and advocacy groups to build their subscriber lists. So we're not bound to this need that we need to get cheap page views, and I think that really helps the quality of our content.
Excellent. Second question from someone who has not asked one. All right, go ahead.
Have you solved the social problems associated with sharing certain ideals? So, for example, if you're sharing that on Upworthy, and some people are like, oh, well, Unilever is also the manufacturer tax if you're supporting these guys. Like, how do you fight that? Not really fight it, but how do you deal with that kind of social problems?
Right. So the question is about, like, I guess, criticism about what we post on Upworthy and whether or not it is actually good and meaningful. I think that we definitely heard criticisms like that a lot, and the thing is, the content we post a lot of times is meant to stand on its own. So even if our content can sometimes go into like politics and stuff like that, and news of the day. So even if there are different viewpoints on things, I think what we really try to hem to is people are going to come into a piece of content. Usually they're not going to really know much context about it, and it's our job to try to make the content stand on its own. And if there does need to be context about it, we do have other, like, we put little snippets below videos just to give more context and things like that. But it's kind of a hard problem. It's when people talk about politics and things like that, it gets very emotional, and that's just something that is, I guess, part of what we do. Like, it's just something we deal with.